welcome everyone. Nice to have you on this episode. So Mike Spanbauer here. I am part of the security marketing function here at Juniper, and I'm extremely pleased to have with me today JJ Minella. She is the founder and principal architect over at Viszen Security. So nice to meet you, JJ. You want to say hi to the audience?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Great to be here.
So we're here today talking through, really what does it mean to manage, right, operations from a security and a network perspective. I mean, JJ's experience in this space is considerable, and of course, Juniper's interest in helping you, the audience, understand what's an option, what's available, and really just how are others sort of working through this and considerations for it. Is what this episode's all about. So here over the next 9 minutes, we'll get into it. So with that, JJ, what I'd love to ask you just to start off this, kind of this topic is, what exactly do you think, most orgs even think about when they're considering, operational needs and behind this, of course, the data requirements that have grown over the years.
I think part of the problem is they're not thinking about it up front. And it's one of those things that pops up and it rears its ugly head during an incident or a situation where it's usually typically something negative happening in the environment. And then people are scrambling to figure out where is the data, who has access. So I would love to, I would actually feel passionate about this because I would love to see that thought process and planning happening earlier.
Yeah. No, I think most orgs do, struggle to think through the operational implications of, the data and even really what are the tools that would be needed, in the scenarios that occur, right? Because, when you're in the middle of a fire, right, you realize that an extinguisher would have been a really great thing to have grabbed on the way out the door, but you really can't do much at that point. So, what are some of the areas that you've seen where organizations struggle when they're sort of in the thick of it, or areas that perhaps need more attention earlier?
I think all of it because I kind of brought up the example of an incident response, during a cybersecurity incident. But really, if we back up from that, there's a daily need to have access to the information. I think that's where we tend to fail. I mean, just holistically as an industry here at different levels, because whether it's, help desk trying to troubleshoot and fix something, an architect that's trying to, increase security or enhance something based on some new feature or protocol, all the way up into, of course, security operations and correlation, and then getting into incident response. And like Mike, we were talking about this the other day. I think one of the reports I read recently said, I think it was 84% of companies reported that they're struggling with the complexity of all the different like tech stack and tools and specifically the monitoring. So there's, uptime resilience monitoring. Is the thing working? Is it passing the packets, whether it's in the cloud or on-prem? And then there's all of the security piece that goes on top of that. Hopefully not separate, but yeah, they're struggling with it at all levels, and that manifests a lot of different ways. So, having worked with literally thousands of organizations over the past, couple decades, all industries, there's that kind of elite few, right? The little top of the tier that has everything mostly figured out, and they're pretty robust and mature. But the rest of us, it's a daily struggle. Where is the data? And then there's just too much data. Like more is not always better.
Well, yeah, and I mean, at that point, right, over the last 20 years, actors have grown more capable. We've had more applications added to the environment. There are more connected nodes. I mean, I don't even know how many devices I have in my home network. Now, granted, I'm perhaps an anomaly, but I think I have something like 100 IPs allocated in my house. And, similarly, right, commercial enterprises with 100,000 employees, right? You can only imagine the number of managed devices and applications and all the work, all the application flows, cloud sources. I mean, all this has to be monitored and then aggregated in order to, in semi-real time, right? Both recognize when something's off as well as then, act on it. I mean, it's a struggle for even the well-equipped orgs that you mentioned, right? That have the astute or really robust teams, but what do other smaller orgs even have a chance of, right? Well, what can they do? And I mean, this is perhaps, I guess, where AI holds so much promise, right? Being
Yeah. Well, and you were talking about like you just said something like when something's weird or something's off. But I think most organizations, again, other than that elite top of the tier, top of the food chain when it comes to security tooling, the rest of us don't know what baseline looks like because unless you have a team, not a person, not someone looking at firewall logs, right? The one the one security I'm air quoting security analyst that you hired. Um, but unless you have a whole team of humans with tools who are sitting there monitoring things constantly and understanding, you don't know what normal looks like. And that's where I think and hope we can start to leverage, the suite of AI technologies because we just can't deal with the volume of data. I mean, you were talking about like all the different applications and the user and the location sprawl. Like it's not like, well, back in my day, you had the you had your campus network and everybody was inside of it and all of your stuff was neatly packed in there. And you could look inside and you could look at the stuff going in and out and everything was good. And it's not like that now.
Right. No, I think actually to that point, knowing your baseline, knowing what's running, and then of course using that as a reference to detect anomalies, to figure out what is off. I mean, these are the types of scenarios in which AI or similar tools that have the ability to do machine learning, right? Based on normative right models, and then spotting the oddities are incredibly well equipped to satisfy. It's part of why we had our launch, here in early October, but the point, of course, is that these technologies lend themselves well to helping those operational challenges. And I mean, I think if you don't take advantage of some of these new technologies, then you'll continue to struggle like, orgs have that aren't, well funded or well equipped enough to have a completely robustly staffed out org to do this human monitoring, which just doesn't scale. I mean, to that point, I mean, I know we talked briefly, but I mean, we see it in the news all the time. I don't know if you have any ops scenarios or kind of examples of where, places in which you've heard clients or orgs that you've spoken with struggle, but I mean, it's a stark world, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I mean I see this still daily and there's, some definitely some headline news floating around out there just in the past few days or weeks of, there's a county in Long Island that's under investigation because there's, $25 million responding to an incident that should never have escalated to that point. It's not like, oh gosh, they got attacked. It was they weren't doing the things that they needed to ahead of time, even after the FBI had warned them. And, that's taxpayers that are paying that $25 million. It doesn't just, we don't magically print paper out of thin air. But it was basic stuff like not doing tabletop exercises, not planning for incident response, not understanding where the data was and wasn't and was going, and just not having that type of telemetry available. And I think, kind of circling back to the more is not better. If we distill this down into the three things to focus on, I think it's quality, correlation, and analysis, not just volume. Is it high quality data? Can you correlate it and contextualize that as to what's happening in your environment off of baseline? And then analyze that and take action on it because the data is not actionable unless those three things are met. And that's where the AI engines are going to, before they take over the world and become our overlords, they will help us in this mission, I'm sure.
I agree, and I think that part about being able to pull from all of these different data points and help those operations people, right, be able to both identify more quickly but also then respond appropriately. I mean, this is sort of that perfect area. I mean, whether it's querying even the libraries of configuration manuals to help the gal that just started a week ago, 2 weeks ago, know how to both troubleshoot a device or a specific element of the environment, or perhaps reconfigure something. These things are now much easier to get access to, whereas again, in my day, right, having to pull the manuals from the books and figure out, all right, so which one was this in, and or pulling up the help files, which was its own joy. It's grown a lot simpler these days. And these are the things that I think AI is starting to really, apply, in real world operations needs and teams to just, well, save time to solve real problems.
Yeah. And I have actually this week I was talking to a friend, and one of the things just offhand, off the cuff, random conversation. One of the things they're dealing with, because he's managing like a SOC basically for the organization. That's a government agency. Um, and one of the things they're dealing with is, we had in Western North Carolina, we had the big flood that came, the hurricane that came through and just dumped an ungodly amount of water, flipped over cars, houses going down the river, like crazy stuff. Same thing now, right? Florida hurricanes, like we have natural disasters and situations. They had a need to turn off multi-factor for a subset of users because nobody had power and cell service, but there were certain things that they were still able to do because they could get to, certain types of hotspots that were spun up. But those accounts needed additional monitoring, right? Because if you've turned off your other control, you've really got to dial into what's happening and keep a sharp, right, high fidelity data on that. So there's stuff like that that I think happens in the normal course of just doing business. That's one example tied to a natural disaster, but stuff like that and this need to kind of twist and turn what we're doing in our operations happens regularly. Uh, yeah, I mean, we have to get better quality data.
No, I agree, JJ, and I'm afraid we're out of time, but we could definitely talk it for even longer on these topics. Obviously, we're both quite passionate, and I mean, a lot is both advancing, a lot of exciting things are happening, but it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me, and certainly would love to have you back on at some point.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Good to see you, Mike.